All right. What's good, people? How you been? I already missed a week. Man, those two homework assignments and midterm really came out of nowhere, but I'll be ready next time. It's in there. It won't happen again. Let's move on. Anyway, today's episode is about Aperture. In my opinion, Aperture is the most important camera setting for you to understand because it can have the most impact on your photos and videos, both visually and psychologically, but we'll get to that later. Physically, aperture is the size of the hole in the lens that light is let into. And basically the way it works is that there's little blades on the inside that kind of open and close depending on what you have your aperture set to. The way you'll be able to tell what your aperture is set to is you're going to look for the setting with a little F and a number next to it. So when you look at this screen, hopefully you can see that it says f4.5 right there, right next to the shutter speed. And the way it works is the lower the number next to the F, the bigger the opening in your lens and the more light you'll be able to let in. But not only does it let in more light, but it also introduces us to a thing called depth of field. Now I won't go into all the physics behind it, but just know the lower the number, the more blurry your background's gonna be. For example, so my camera lens is set to f2.8, which means my depth of field is going to be pretty thin. Meaning, the only things that are going to be sharp and in focus are the things that are the same distance away from the camera as I am. So he's going to be blurry. But if I close down my aperture and I change it to f16, for instance, it's going to make that depth of field a lot larger. So he can be sharp at the same time as I'm being sharp. Yes, a blurry background can look really good and it can also help you tell your story, but you don't necessarily need the widest aperture lens to take a nice picture. A perfect example of that is landscapes. When you take landscape pictures, you want to crank your f-stop as high as possible so you can create that deep depth of field and get as much in focus as you possibly can. But even for portraits, sometimes people go to crazy locations, travel all over the world just to shoot at f1.2 and blow the background out. What was the point of going to Hawaii if you weren't going to let me see Hawaii? Like, I don't understand that. But depth of field isn't the only thing that aperture affects. It can have a huge effect on sharpness as well. Depending on the quality of the lens that you have, the sharpness of your lens wide open is most likely going to be worse than if you were to stop down a couple times. And just like shutter speed, aperture affects the exposure of your images as well. Like I said before, the lower the number, the bigger the hole and the more light you're going to be letting in. So in low light situations, it's always good to have a fast lens with an aperture of 1.2, 1.4, or 1.8. But those lenses can get kind of expensive, so a 2.8 like I have works just fine. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Camera Basics. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys felt like you learned something. Drop a comment down below. Let me know how I can explain things any better. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next Saturday. Peace.